the introductions after I do the. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wellness Revolution with Dr. Robert Wiedemann and Marvin Ropp. Of course, I'm Doc G, the host that hosts everything, and they run the show. You can catch Dr. Wiedemann at healthreform90@gmail.com or text him at 406-270-3754 or visit him at getdocsmessage.com. Getdocsmessage.com. Welcome, guys. This is also for information purposes or entertainment purposes only, as well as not. Welcome, guys, to your show.
Good evening. And tonight, Marvin is going to make a presentation on the minerals, on basically the agricultural side of this, which is very, very important. So here we go.
So thank you all for coming. And those of you who cannot see or listening on audio, cannot see the presentation, I'm going to give you a lot of visual examples of how these minerals will affect animals and humans, as well as plants. So with that said, we're going to jump right into it. Just kind of recover last week. Last week, we went in kind of very in-depth about the neurons from the brain to the cells and the neurological pathways, efferent sites, which is the signals coming from the brain to the cell, and then the interference of that. And then on the way, these cells then communicate back to the brain what's going on. And these cells are communicating with frequencies. And these frequencies are emitted by minerals. And these minerals that we, in our body, we know of, as of science today, current science today, we know of 60 minerals that are essential in order to maximize our genetic potential. So what we want to do is tonight, we want to jump into the agricultural side of it, plants and animals. And the reason why we do that is because a lot of people think they can eat healthy. You can eat their way to health, and that's not the case. A lot of people don't realize the negative side effects of genetically modified grains. Okay, we're going to show you a lot of data. This is all well-documented data. It's out there, and the agrochemical, they are very, very astute in trying to sell their product. And the reason why is because when you genetically modify a grain, you have a patent on it. And when you have a patent on it, just like any pharmaceutical, you own that patent and you own that process, and you can make a lot of money. The downside of this is that you and I, the consumer, are going to pay for that research. And we're going to put a lot of money in the pockets of these agrochemical companies because they have patent a genetically modified grain. And they're trying to do all kinds of funny stuff with bioengineering. So with that said, let's get right into it. And we're going to go ahead and talk about some of these things that we have. Can you see that? Minerals and Genetic Potential by Marvin Ropp. Can you see that, Dr. Wiedemann?
No, I can't.
You can't see it? It should be up.
Not yet. It's not there.
Does it come? It should. I'm sharing my screen. Hold on, let me do this. Share.
There it is. It's coming up, Marvin.
You see it?
No, I'm seeing your screen. Here we go.
Do you see it? So we have a.
There we go.
Do you see it? Okay. So we'll go on to the next slide here. The next slide, I want to introduce you to Dr. Don Huber. He is a professor emeritus at Purdue University. He has a PhD in plant pathology. He's a top advisor to U.S. military on Soviet biological warfare program. The reason I want to introduce this man to you is because he no longer works for, he's retired. But since he's retired, he's able to talk more about things he's been able to, that they involved in. So I want to draw your attention to a top advisor to U.S. military on Soviet biological warfare program. During the Cold War, we have a lot of bioengineers. That was to engineer bioweapons. and that comes from viruses, plants, you name it. And so what happened is that during the Cold War, we developed a lot of these bioweapons, bioengineers. That's what they were doing. They did work for the defense contractors. After the Cold War, there was really no need for new research and development of bioweapons. So all these bioengineers had no job. So what they ended up doing is they ended up converting them over to, well, that's bioengineering plants. That's kind of what these Cold War bioengineers were doing. They was brought on board by the agrochemical companies in order to, you know, see if we can't maybe use their technology in bioengineering plants. And that's kind of what Dr. Don Huber has helped us understand what was happening here. So we're going to go through and just kind of give you an idea. And this data is about 10 years old. And so as of 2015, 2016, 90% of our soybeans are genetically modified. Corn is 88%, cotton is 93%, granola is 90%, that's in Canada. Sugar beets is 95%, alfalfa, hay, not sprouts, and that's still questionable. There's genetically modified alfalfa out there. I don't know what percentage that is or not, but as you can see, they're really aggressively trying to alter the gene structure of our crops. And the reason why is because it's called Roundup Ready. Roundup Ready, and we'll talk about Roundup here in a minute. And here's a picture of all these agrochemicals products being used on, well, the top you see row crops, and you can see that boom covers, I mean, a huge swath of soybeans or corn, whatever that is. And then the bottom right-hand picture is a full year application of all these agrochemicals on, that's grapes, that's vineyards.
Well, Marvin, none of which would be necessary if they had the proper minerals in the soil.
And that's exactly what we're going to get at. So by 527 million pounds over the first 16 years, that was put on these crops, up to 227% per acre on Roundup Ready soybeans. Over 14 million U.S. acres are infested with 22 varieties of glyphosate-resistant weeds. And so when they first developed Roundup Ready corn and soybeans, the way they sold this stuff to the farmers is that compaction is a problem. And so now you can go in there and you can spray for weeds one time, and you don't have to worry about cultivating that soil. In other words, compacting the soil. Well, that was a kind of a exciting thing for the farmer, because he has to get on his tractor, go out there and cultivate that corn or soybeans with the weeds in it. So that's how they kind of sold it. Another thing too is that they were trying to promote it is in support of world hunger. In other words, this genetically modified grains increase yield. As a result, we're going to be able to eliminate world hunger. That was the big selling point back, 20, 30 years ago in the early 90s when they started this stuff. So glyphosate is a Roundup. It's a strong mineral chelator. What that basically means, it limits minerals uptake into the plants. The lack of plant-derived minerals in our feed and food is the cause of over 900 mineral deficiency diseases in animals and humans alike. And so even though our topsoils had been depleted of these minerals, we add Roundup on these Roundup Ready corn and soybeans, it even increases the loss of mineral deficiencies in our greens exponentially. General Mills has stopped using Roundup Ready greens for their cereal. They just had too many problems with it. And we found out all kinds of problems with this stuff, of this Roundup Ready. Now we're finding out is that the soils have been so contaminated with this Roundup glyphosate that there's no microbes able to live in the soil anymore, no fish worms. And so essentially we're poisoning the dirt ground. And of course, agrochemical claims it's fine. It doesn't hurt you, but it also gets into your food source, and it also affects a microbiome in our gut, animals and humans alike. And you'll see some of these pictures here.
Yeah, Marvin, I spoke to Dr. Wallach about that. And he said, well, the genie's out of the bottle now. He says the only thing you can do is really to fortify yourself with minerals.
And that's exactly, as I said, the genie's out of the bottle. So how do we overcome this? And well, we're going to discuss that. And one way is you've got to nutrify your body with these minerals. And that's why it's so critical to stay on top of your nutritional protocol, because these minerals will offset the negative side effects of what the genetically modified grains do. For example, here on the left picture, you'll see a bag of feed that has a non-GMO corn, and the mice and rats will gladly eat that stuff. On the right, you don't see a single evidence of rodents eating that corn. I've even tried this with squirrels. I bought organic grain, a corn, and GMO corn, and set them side by side out on a tree. And I had one of my distributors do this in Pennsylvania. They had a lot of squirrels in the backyard, and same thing. They would not eat. They would always go for the organic grain first.
Marvin, I remember that you showed me that field where the guy raised everything organic, and all these crows from all the way around were on that field. Remember? You drove me past that one field.
Yep, and that basically, and that was kind of my first eye-opening experience back. This is about 10, 15 years ago when I had this experience with an organic farmer, and he's a certified organic farmer in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I drove up to his driveway, and he had just got done planting his cornfield. And I drove up and got out of the car, and I saw the guy walking out of the barn. As he rounded the barn, he looked out to his cornfield, and he took his hat off and he threw it on the ground and says, "Damn it, those damn crows have found my corn." And so I asked him, I says, "You must be an organic farmer, aren't you?" So, "Yeah, how did you know?" Because he didn't know me. I just drove up. He just thought I was some salesman. So, "Well, because your crows tell me that the seed that you planted does not have any chemicals on it. As a result, they can eat that corn. It's not genetically modified." He says, "Wow." He says, "Who are you?" So I said, "Well, I might be the answer to your problem." And so that's how I made that relationship with him, that connection with him. And so it was kind of profound how I was able to all of a sudden be there in the right time. Another time I was up in Wisconsin, and I pulled into this driveway, this guy was out. He had an Amish guy. He was out there in the corn crib. Corn crib is, they harvest the corn by hand and put it in the crib. And it's kind of like you can see the corn because it's inside this wire mesh, whatever you want to call it. And there was, I don't know how many squirrels are out there, but he was out there shooting squirrels in his corn crib. And of course, he got his limit pretty quickly, and the rest of the squirrels took off running. And I walked up to him and says, "I says, let me ask you." I says, "Are you organic farmer?" So, "Yeah." "How do you know?" I said, "Because the squirrels tell me that." I says, "Yeah, man, these squirrels, they come here from neighboring farms and they eat more corn than my pigs and my calves do." And I tell you what, there was a lot of ears of corn that had just been eaten by these squirrels. And he said, "I come out here every day and I shoot my limit of squirrels, and they still keep coming back." And I said, "That's because they cannot digest that genetically modified grain that's on your neighbor's farm. That's why they come here." So here's another Wall Street Journal, September 25th, 2012. Russia suspends import and use of American GMO corn after study reveals cancer risks. Now, that was a Wall Street Journal. That should have been promoted. I mean, it should have been a major, hey, stop, promoting GMOs. But Agrochemical was very successful in continuing to promote their corn. And of course, they deny the responsibility of that this corn actually has negative side effects to the gut's microbiome. So here's an example. Mice and GMOs, French study, September 19, 2012. Mice develop mammary tumors, severe liver and kidney damage. 50% of the males and 70% of the females died prematurely. Here's a picture of these mice. Look at all those tumors. That is a result of genetically modified grains. And in other words, anytime you have tumors or cancer, it's a severely compromised immune system. But think about this. What does it take to support and promote healthy immune system? Minerals. Remember, minerals are the currency of life. Minerals is a must if you are wanting to reduce the risk of a compromised immune system. I cannot begin to tell you. I can't begin to tell you some of these animals I've seen, these feedlots that have been feeding these genetically modified grains. It's horrible. Now, here's another study: hog and GMO, genetically modified GMO stands for genetically modified organisms. Australia study, January 2013. So the one on the left is non-GM fed pigs. And the one on the right is the picture of a stomach. This is a picture of inside of a stomach now. Now look on the one on the right, genetically modified fed pigs. Now the one on the right shows a lot of red. That's inflammation. GM fed pigs showed 2.6 times more stomach inflammation than non-GM fed pigs. 41.7% females and 22% males. In other words, we see this consistently. Females are more affected by genetically modified grains than males. And this is the reason why we see a problem with infertility. So when you are lacking minerals in your diet, I don't care male or female, human or animals, it's going to definitely affect our reproductive capability, without a doubt. Here's mineral deficiencies, signs of an unhealthy chicken. I see that chicken on the bottom. That chicken is a picture from a chicken house that I took. And I'm not kidding you. The owner of that chicken house had to walk through that chicken house on a daily basis picking up chickens. They're dead. And notice how little feathers are on the bottom of that chicken because they're picking feathers off each other. I've actually walked into commercial chicken houses where there's not a single feather on these birds.
Wow.
That's because they were getting the genetically modified grains. They were severely lacking minerals. And so I see this all the time. And these chicken farmers do not own the birds. There's Tyson and Gerber and all these big conglomerates. And they have a contract with a broker for the grain. And guess who the broker is in bed with? Agrochemical. He's not in bed with. Now, there's a lot of organic chicken farmers popping up now. And I would recommend, if you have any issues with your diet, whatever, if you want to eat healthy, eat organic. But that does not mean that organic chicken has been fed and nutrified organic grains. I just want to clarify that. So here's some side effects: high fatality ratios, feather picking, poor eggshell strength. And this is a big thing for farmers, chicken farmers. If you sell, let's say, Smith or Albertsons or Ralph's a dozen eggs, and one of those eggs breaks in that carton when they arrive on the store, that store will charge back 1 dozen eggs. Even if there's one broken egg, they'll charge back 1 dozen eggs to that supplier. And that's a huge reduction in profit margin for that farmer.
They have to do that because you break one egg in that carton, the whole carton is exposed to bacteria. These shells are permeable, and if there's bacteria in one of those eggs, it can affect the whole dozen.
So that's the unfortunate part about it. So when we actually nutrify the water of these commercial chicken farmers, we have tremendous success. We actually have tests that show 30% increased strength in the shell of the chicken egg. We have respiratory issues in these chickens, poor feed conversion ratios. Feed conversion ratio means that it takes so many pounds of feed to produce a 1 pound of live bird. So a 2.0 ratio, feed conversion ratio, would mean that it would take 2 pounds of feed to produce 1 pound of chicken. That would be 1 pound of live bird, right? And so the benchmark is if you want to make money in raising chickens, you want to have a feed conversion ratio of less than 2.0. And most of the farmers I deal with are into 1.9, 1.8. I've seen some down into 1.7, but very few feed conversion ratios come down to 1.7. Now, when they add minerals to the existing feeding program, I see the feed conversion ratio come way down, and it'll drop into the 1.6 and 1.5. I've seen less than 1.5, but that was more of a experimental unit in high school, and we'll talk more about that. Of course, poor laying ratios. Laying ratios are referring to out of 100 laying hens, you might get 60% 60 eggs. That's a 60% laying ratio. You should be in the 90 to 95 percentile laying ratio when you have a healthy flock. And most commercial growers, commercial poultry layers do not get that.
And by the way, I want to just pause for a minute here, Marvin, and remind everyone, if you like the content here, to make sure that you uh, push the like button and join our channel, because that helps our algorithms. So
one of the things that YouTube has been taking down our videos. I'm assuming somebody's not very happy with our content, but that's the reason why we have a website that specifically for members and those people who are watching this training presentation. And Dr. Wiedemann, you want to go ahead and give us your website once again before we move on?
Yes, it's getdocsmessage.com.
Thank you. Here's just a little cartoon I found on the internet. I thought it was pretty cool. And it says, many animals avoid GM, genetically modified feed, when given a choice. And that's, I've been able to demonstrate that over and over and over again. So here's some economic factors. Chemical companies own and control and manufacture our drugs, pharmaceuticals, and agricultural genetically modified organisms and plants. Okay. Now here's a picture of courtesy of University of Michigan. The red dots are the agrochemical companies, and the blue dots is the seed companies. What is a chemical company doing owning a seed company? Well, here's the relationship. Well, now Monsanto has been bought out by Bayer since this has been brought up, but basically Monsanto was one of the biggest agrochemical companies we had until the European and World Health Court, World Court came in and sued them basically out of existence, and Bayer came in and bought them out. And so, but all those seed companies that you see connected to Monsanto is now underneath Bayer. And so this is what's a problem here. We have a problem that the chemical companies want to control the seed companies. They should be completely the opposite. The chemical companies should have nothing to do with seed companies, in my personal opinion. Yeah. Okay, Bayer. When you see Bayer, what does that think? What do you think of? Well, aspirin, right? Bayer aspirin. And if you look at Bayer aspirin, I mean, look at some of their ads. This came from an ad. I got this off of a farm magazine in Canada. Here it is. Look at that. That's a combining wheat. And up in the top right-hand corner, science for a better life. And so if you look at this ad, you'll see here, healthier world, one harvest at a time, to provide enough food for the world. And once again, here's that little talking point to the farmers. And they're convincing the farmers that they're fighting world hunger by buying their genetically modified grains and their seed. And when you talk to a farmer in the Midwest, typically it costs between $300 and $400 an acre to plant an acre of corn now. Back in the 60s, before we had genetically modified corn, we could plant corn because we could save corn for our own seed and plant that for next year if we wanted to. But even if we didn't, you can still plant corn for less than $50 an acre back in the 60s and 70s.
Can't do that anymore.
Not anymore, not even close. And so you're not, as a farmer, you're not even allowed to save back seed from your crop, that's genetically modified crop, for next year. If you do that, they will sue you and prevent you from farming. The other thing too with genetically modified farmers, if you're an organic farmer, live downwind from a farm that has genetically modified grains, if the wind blows that dust from the corn or soybean field into your organic farm, and if you go in and harvest that grain shortly after that wind has blown that dust over, that organic grain will not be certified organic because it has too much of the genetically modified grain in there. So what they do is they tell you to wait to harvest that till after your neighbor has harvested the genetically modified corn or soybeans, and then wait till a good rain comes along. Once it rains, after the rain, it dries, then you can harvest your organic corn or soybeans or wheat or whatever, and then it passes the organic tests. In order to be certified,
I got a question for you. As a solution, because they will come in if they find DNA in your grains, they'll come and sue you. I was wondering what would happen if you put signs all around your property saying no trespassing. Any DNA coming across the road, the company will be sued for trespassing, and and then have it served on these companies, saying, and serve it on your neighbors. If any of your DNA comes over into our property, you'll be sued for trespassing.
Well, a lot of farmers have tried to sue, and they ran against brick walls because guess who comes in and defends that farmer that's buying that seed from agrochemical? There's nobody has been successful in suing a farmer that was contaminated a neighbor's farm because he's organic certified.
Well,
My
you'd have to sue
brother-in-law,
the companies.
my
You'd
brother-in-law
have
is a non-GMO farmer in Michigan, and he had that problem. He had corn that was contaminated with the neighbor's corn, and so the feed company just told him, "Look, just wait until a good rain, and they'll wash all that stuff off." And so he did, and a couple of weeks later, he was able to harvest his corn, and it passed the non-GMO test.
Oh, I see.
So it's a problem. It's a real big problem, and hopefully, RFK Jr. will be able to solve this problem for us.
Right. Yeah.
He's very aware of this problem. Okay,
You
so
know,
we had. Go ahead, Dr. Wiedemann.
I was just going to say that was a problem specifically up in Alberta, where they raise lots of grain, and it's going to be interesting to see when they enter the U.S. What's going to happen with them.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a big problem. But the good news is there's a big demand for organic grains, and we cannot raise enough organic grains to supply the demand for organic feed or food in this country anymore. We have to import. The first time we've ever had to import grains is a demand for organic. So that's the good news. And more farmers are converting their fields to organic, non-GMO. So we have here drugs are blockers, inhibitors. They disrupt the metabolic enzyme function, and they disrupt the function of the subject's DNA. Now, that doesn't matter if we talked about pharmaceuticals, how they are the interference of the electrical, the neurons from the brain to the cell, and and that's basically from the cell to the brain. And so we talked about that last week about that. Now, genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, alters the plant's original gene structure. It disrupts mineral uptake in plants, and it disrupts the function of the subject's DNA. Now, both alters the subject cells from the original design. Remember this: drugs are blockers and inhibitors. Genetically modified grains, they modify the gene structure in order to be able to use a Roundup Ready a weed killer. And this stuff here, unfortunately, does have side effects to your digestive system. And you saw that with the mice and the hog study. So how do we reverse this trend? Well, chemical companies own agriculture and pharmaceuticals. And so what we want to do is we want to use organic, non-GMO grains. And of course, instead of pharmaceuticals, we want to teach people how to nutrify their body with all the 90 essential nutrients. Like Dr. Williams has been saying, if you give the body what it needs, it will heal itself. And Dr. Glidden, I love Dr. Glidden. He likes to use healing is easy. Dr. Glidden talks about this all the time. And he's a naturopathic physician, which all he does is promote longevity products. And we actually have interviews with Dr. Glidden on the website. And Dr. Wiedemann, would you once again give us that website and people that may want to write it down?
Yes, that's getdocsmessage.com. And you want to talk about the significance of that, Marvin? Get Doc's message.
Well, one of the things that Dr. Wallach has done, he has a PhD in comparative pathology. And that website, you can go and you can watch the interviews that I film of Dr. Wallach. I interviewed him and I asked him all these questions that he normally doesn't present in his seminars. And many of you have heard the audio cassette, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And many of you heard of some of his audio CDs, but a lot of you have never had a chance to sit down with Dr. Wallach and pick his brain. And, there's questions I was able to ask him that most people never even thought of asking him. And so it's just profound information there. And Dr. Wiedemann, you've had a chance to go through those videos. Aren't those videos invaluable?
Yeah, they're amazing. And I was able to actually interview Dr. Wallach. And man, I'll tell you, you saw my mouth drop open several times when we were when I was interviewing him. I learned things from him I never learned in chiropractic college. That he knew, and he surprised me because on one of the videos, he said that I was to be the Moses of leading other chiropractors into using the 90 essential nutrients, because
And
I've
so,
been in chiropractic for quite some time, and the thing of it is that there are several companies around. One was called Vitaminerals that was there clear when I was back a chiropractic student, and we had Dr. Earhart was a certified chiropractic rheumatologist, and he used to give lectures, and he was advocating vitaminerals, and I thought, well, wow, he wanted every patient on vitaminerals. Well, in looking through their products, they hardly have anything compared to longevity. Longevity is so complete; it's the most complete, the best formulations I have ever seen in my entire professional career. And why people don't just jump on this, I don't know, because the the evidence is here. You have two choices. You can either live artificially and suppress your symptoms, or you can actually let your body heal itself. And to me, that's the best choice. I would far rather let my body heal itself by staying in chiropractic adjustment, keeping interference clear, and taking the nutrients that I know my body needs. And believe me, your body needs it. I wouldn't want to be without this stuff. I take it every single day, and if I miss a few days, and I have, if I ran out of product or something like that, I can tell the difference. And boy, when I get it in my system again, it's just like turning on the superchargers. In World War II, there were two things that really gave the Allies the advantage. One was the constant speed prop on airplanes, and the other was the supercharger. Those two things allowed our Allied pilots to get above the enemy and have superior air power. And it made a tremendous difference. The Battle of Britain was won as a result of the constant speed prop, the hydraulically positioned blades on the propeller. And this is just like that in terms of our body. It's supercharged. And I don't want to make claims here. It's just that when you have all of the nutrients present all the time, and you do have to absorb them, you do have to take, it does take effort to heal, for your body to get your digestion in order. But if your body is absorbing all 90 essential nutrients, your body will do marvelous things.
excellent.
I think we were created to have all these nutrients, and people sometimes say, well, at creation, we didn't have to have supplements. Yes, you did. What do you think the tree of life was all about? The tree of life was all about taking supplements once a month. You get a monthly supply off the tree of life or whatever, 12 different fruits, every year. So,
But Dr. Wiedemann, the minerals that we get from the Utah mine is prehistoric plant minerals, and those minerals are from plants that grew before the flood. And if you analyze the ratio of those minerals to each other, it's a perfect ratio to its cofactors to each other. In other words, when people eat of the fruits and vegetables before the flood, they didn't have to supplement because everything they were getting was they got all the vitamins, amino acids, and essential fatty acids from the plants, plus the minerals. The irrigation system, Mr. Do, that came up was watering these plants, and these plants had all the minerals they need to maximize animals and humans' genetic potential. And just take
the proof of it. The proof of what you're saying is in those Utah mines.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, if we were able to resurrect a dinosaur, or let's take a dinosaur DNA and create a dinosaur on this side of the flood, that dinosaur, even though we put him in the pristine forest, the rainforest, the Amazon, it would starve because of lack of nutrients. There's not enough minerals and nutrients in those trees and forests to feed a dinosaur.
Yeah, and the Ice Age was actually caused by the flood waters. There was waters above the earth. When they came crashing down, it froze the caps and quick froze a lot of these, these animals, and some people would eat those. And we had giants in the earth. They were consuming mineral-rich food, from, from prehistoric stuff. So, we do have evidence that there were people were much taller before the flood than they are now.
This is all good stuff, Doctor Wiedemann, but we do need to move on. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time.
Yep.
So the good news is the negative side effects of glyphosate, which is a chemical in Roundup, can generally be compensated through mineral supplementation. Foliar applications of micronutrients, that's the liquid minerals, after glyphosate is applied to Roundup-ready crops. Plant mineral supplementation to feed, food, and/or water for livestock and humans. So that's basically where we're coming from. So we showed you the problem, and we're identifying the problem. The good news is one thing I always like to bring up, when I was active duty military, my commanding officer, one of my better commanding officers, always says, Mr. Rapa says, you come to my office with a problem, I expect you to have a solution to the problem. And a lot of people out there are complaining about their health, but they don't have a solution to it. And we're going to teach you how to recognize the problem, and we're going to teach you what a solution is, natural solution, okay? So we have covered this earlier, but I want to cover this again, called the law of minimum. A plant's genetic potential, yield, and growth is limited to the nutrient that's least in the soil. This is discovered by Justice von Liebig back in the 1800s, 1840s, to be specifically. If you look at there's a picture of a plant on the left with its root system, the area where the roots are in the ground called the rhizosphere. And those roots actually metabolize those metallic minerals, brings it up into the plant. Okay, so that plant's genetic potential is limited to the mineral that's least in the soil. So there's 3 nutrients the plant needs: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And there's 3 secondary nutrients: calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. And then there is 10 micronutrients listed here, for a total of 16 nutrients that the plant will benefit from. Now, that does not, 16 is not even close to 60. There's 59 more beneficial substances or minerals that exist in the crust of the earth, where out of those 59 that are missing, there's another 54 that are essential to complete a nutritional recipe. So here is and I always like to go back to Genesis. Plants were created for food and the nutritional benefit for mankind, beasts, birds, and all the creatures that move on the ground. I give every green plant for food. Genesis 1:29-30. Okay. Plants can manufacture vitamins, amino acids, and essential fatty acids. So if you are a vegetarian, you'll get, there's nothing wrong. I have no problem with vegetarians. The problem with the vegetarian's diet is that they're not getting the minerals in order to utilize the vitamins, amino acids, and essential fatty acids. Okay. So if you are a vegetarian, you want to stay a vegetarian, I don't have no problem with that, but you must supplement with these plant minerals in order to maximize your genetic potential.
Marvin, one of the things I noticed growing up, I grew up in Iowa here with lots and lots of farmland all around. And I would notice in the past, we had pasture land around us. Mr. Bry lived next to us. He was a farmer. He had cows, and they would leave clumps of grass and things like that uneaten. And I always wondered why. And then when I met Dr. Wallach and learned Dr. Wallach's message, I suddenly realized why. Those were patches where the minerals were not strong and the cows didn't want to eat it.
Exactly.
That's why. And you can look all over and see pasture land like this. You've seen it, Marvin. You probably grew up around pasture land.
Oh, yeah.
And noticed clumps being left by the animals. And when Noah came out of the ark, the land was devastated. God allowed man to begin eating meat at that time. And I believe one of the reasons is because the animals have the ability to forage for minerals. They could find those mineral-rich areas where man does not have the ability to do that. I can't sense when the plant's got minerals in it or not, except by taste, but by then it's too late. You've already cooked it. You don't want to throw it
Well,
out. Or
we're going to show some pictures of trail camera photos of minerals, mountain meadows with minerals and mountain meadows without minerals, and you'll be just amazed the difference that these wild animals will come in and graze areas where it's been mineralized where they haven't been before. And so
now I urge you on the website, on our website at getdocsmessage.com, and under Dr. Wallach, go down to the bottom to the agricultural section there and watch the testimonials and the scientific part of it and go through all those, and you'll see illustrations of all of this. Right, Marvin?
So what I'm going to do is actually I want to go and find that. Let's go to that website right now, and I'm going to show that to you. So we'll take a little break from our presentation, and we will go in there. Okay, that wrong. It did that wrong. There we go. And I want to use that's the one I want to use. Get in. Okay, under Dr. Wallach's tab. Hold on here. Let me get back to the screen share here. Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. Okay, here is Dr. Wiedemann's his website here. And you've got Dr. Wallach tab. It's highlighted in red. Come down here and you click on the agriculture below that subcategory. You click on presentation, and there's my lovely wife and my little intro here. Here is all the subjects on the agricultural lectures I've been doing over the years have been recorded, and you can go ahead and watch these, and just phenomenal. And so this is where you find the material. And as I said, once again, we're not the experts. What we've done is we recorded the materials on the lectures and interviews and testimonials, and let the individual, make your own decisions. Dr. Mary Lucero, she has a PhD in genomic engineering. University of Mexico. If you've never watched her videos, I would encourage you to watch her videos. She was working with a group of scientists out of University of Mexico, and she used the young jelly plant minerals. And she called me up. I remember the day she called me up and said, Marvin, I understand you've got something that I'm very interested in. And so she has been trying to grow microbes in a laboratory for many years, was unsuccessful until she started feeding these microbes these minerals. And I'm not going to spill the beans, but watch her videos and she'll tell you the end result. The end result was when she presented her study to the USDA, they pulled her $7.5 million grant and prevented her from teaching at any university ever again. That was because she stood up for what was right. And she called me up in tears. Marvin, I don't have a job anymore. They won't let me teach anymore. So, well, what happened, Mary? So, well, I presented my data and findings, and it showed them we can grow microbes in a laboratory using minerals. Well, that was not what agrochemical wanted to hear. So she talks about her journey and how it's all came about. And I would encourage you to listen to her testimonials. And of course, we have testimonies. We have a handful of testimonies here. But
the two of my favorite are Rodney's Ranch and let's see here, and the sheep. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
One on the sheep.
Yeah.
And even the roses. The roses is great too. I didn't realize this, but you ever go to a flower shop, and you see beautiful roses, but they have no smell to them. But if you raise them in minerals, the aroma is just amazing. So if you ever, and the same thing is, the flavor of fruits and things like this, the flavor, when Mount St. Helens went off several years ago, all these minerals got spread over Yakima, Washington, and Wenatchee, and for years after the apples were in abundance. They were big and they were juicy and sweet, for years after that. So and it's basically the minerals.
Now, getting back to our presentation, can you see the slide on plants manufacture? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So here we're back where we left off. We took a little rabbit trail, but I thought that rabbit trail is very important for you to understand the resources that we have behind this presentation. So we have here a picture of a plant. And so a plant only needs 3 nutrients. Animals and humans need 90 nutrients. Okay. So these plant minerals have a negative polarity. They're 95 to 90% bioavailable. They're water soluble, and you cannot overdo in these minerals. In other words, if you take too much of them, you just get diarrhea. In other words, you don't develop a heavy metal toxicity by taking these minerals. Metallic minerals or raw minerals have a positive polarity. They're clay rock base. They have oxides or carbonates. They're only 8 to 10% bioavailable, and these raw minerals, depends on what mineral it is, you can develop a heavy metal toxicity. For example, arsenic in a metallic form is fatal. Aluminum in a metallic form is toxic. Selenium in a metallic form is toxic. Okay, so we want minerals that have been metabolized by the root of a plant. Now you look here on the right-hand picture, the picture on the right-hand side here of this slide, you'll see the roots, and you'll see in the soil, you have all these different minerals in the soil. It's just some examples here. You have your primary nutrients, NPK, you have your secondary, and then you have your beneficial minerals. And this is 16 of them that we had listed earlier. And these have a positive polarity, okay? These metallic minerals have a positive polarity. And for example, if you spray that plant with glyphosate, Roundup, it limits the plant's ability to uptake that mineral. We want a plant that has maximized its genetic potential by bringing in all the minerals available to it in that topsoil. And so not only that, but what we do is when that plant digests those minerals, those roots is its digestive system. It gives off a beneficial bacteria and is able to digest those minerals and bring it up into the plant. And that process, science as we know it today, cannot convert a metallic mineral from a positive polarity to a negative polarity.
Now, Marvin, back when I first met you and Dr. Wallach, this one presentation is what really opened my eyes. I never knew this before, never realized it until I saw this illustration. And it literally changed my life, because had I known this back when I was in practice, I would have been incorporating Doc's message into my practice. I would have, but I didn't because I didn't know this.
This is not being taught in the universities. Doctors will not know it. Even naturopath physicians don't even know it. A lot of people don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of people want to give you a list of minerals, Great Salt Lake minerals, but they're not plant minerals. They're metallic minerals. The minerals out of the Great Salt Lake is not the same thing as the minerals from the Utah mine that young Jody gets the minerals from. It's two different animals. So here's some examples. So if you are skeptical about these products and you have house plants, then I'm going to challenge you to, you can buy these called blooming minerals in a 2.5 pound or 4 pound container through Longevity, and add these minerals to your potting soil in your house plants. Or you can get the liquid version of it and you can irrigate them, that bottle on the left-hand side. So that's basically what you can do. If you are into large row cropping, you can use the liquid minerals to put on your crops. So basically, here's how you do it. Blooming minerals are granular. That's if you buy the 40-pound bag. You can put 40 pounds to 3,300 square feet. That's a medium-sized garden. Or it comes out to 12 pounds to 1,000 square feet. Or if you have potting soil like a greenhouse or a house plants, 1 tablespoon to a gallon of potting soil. Okay, and then you just irrigate it, about twice a month with the mineralized water from that liquid. It's humic acid that you see on that bottle on the slide before. Now we also can use the liquid minerals on foliar feeding crops. Foliar feeding means spray, just like you spray, a pesticide or herbicide on a plant. You can do the same thing with minerals. And so this tells you how to use it. And so you can add liquid seaweed or fish concentrate to activate the enzymes, and so helps basically fertilize. A lot of farmers already use seaweed, and they use fish meal. And that's a good biostimulant. But when you add the minerals to this biostimulant, you just get much better results.
Yeah.
Here's some results here. This was done by the Japanese food analysis, and there's three different types of beneficial bacteria that give you plant's ability to mineral uptake. And if you look at the before and after, in other words, from the left to right, the bacteria on the left 20 times increase bacterium. The middle bacterium 100 times, and the one on the right is 7.5 times. In other words, what this basically means is that it increases the plant's ability to break down these metallic minerals in the soil and mineral uptake into the plant. So when you get increased mineral uptake into the plant, then what happens? Well, this is what happens. Here's a picture of a plant and its root mass. That root mass, the inner circle represents a plant's root mass without minerals, and the outer circle represents the mineral plant's root mass with minerals. Okay, and we'll show you pictures of this here in a second, but you have increased canopy. When you have more canopy, more sunlight, more surface area sunlight, and see, you need sunlight in order to stimulate photosynthesis. The more canopy you've got, the more carbon you can consume, CO2. See, plants consume CO2. The physical manifestation of plants is nothing more than CO2. That's all it is. Okay.
Marvin, I've often wondered if when they lost all of these chestnut trees out east, there was a blight that came from China and literally wiped out. I mean, our whole eastern seaboard was rich with chestnut trees. And I mean, animals carrier pigeons, fed on these, and so did all of the deer and things like that. All through the Carolinas and all the eastern seaboard had these rich chestnut trees, and they were literally wiped out by this one infection from China. Now they've been struggling to try to manipulate the genes. I've often wondered if using these minerals wouldn't help recover our chestnut trees.
Well, when you see the pictures that we have, what we're doing is we maximize that plant's genetic potential. We're just adding minerals, increase root mass, increase canopy, and it's a win-win situation for everybody, for food, for animals, and for the farmer's bottom line profits. Here's another.
Marvin, I want one more point, really important. If you'll back up one slide, and think of the human body. Of the brain and the nerves reaching into the tissues and the blood vessels. If you have mineral rich, wouldn't you have better nerve coverage and better blood vessel coverage as a result of these minerals, possibly?
Absolutely. So the next slide here, this was done by an Amish man, Richard Lambright, in Shipshewana, Indiana. So there is the red arrows point to soybeans. The yellow arrows point to corn. Now notice the two plants on the left is corn and soybeans, and this was after 3 weeks. These plants were soaked overnight in mineralized water. The seed was soaked overnight in mineralized water, and then it was planted in a peat moss. It's organic material, and then that was for the seeds that had the minerals, and so the seeds without minerals, they were just planted in this organic peat moss, and ones that were soaked in minerals. And notice the difference in the growth of that plant. Look at the difference in corn, the corn on the left with the yellow arrow, the corn on the right with the yellow arrow. Notice a huge difference. The corn on the right is almost 3 times the size of the corn on the left. That's just in 3 weeks. Look at the root mass of that soybean plant on the left versus the one on the right, and that root mass is a good 3 times more, if not more. And that's just an example of what these minerals can do. Here is my daughter Abigail. She has had multiple science fair projects starting in the 5th grade, And this here is a sweet corn with minerals. The one on the left is without minerals. The one on the right is with minerals. Now, here is the data. That sweet corn on the left is 20 inches tall. The sweet corn on the right is 28.5 inches tall. This was 4 weeks. This is part of her science fair project called the Law of Minimum. She was in the 6th grade in elementary school. She soaked the seeds in water overnight. That's ones without minerals. Then planted the soil with organic fertilizer. Then the one on the right, which is your sweet corn, same exact corn, is organic. It's organic sweet corn. Soaked the seeds were soaked in minerals overnight. Then planted in soil with blooming minerals and organic fertilizer. 4 weeks later, we extracted the plants, and you can see the difference in canopy and root mass. It's phenomenal difference. She got first place in her school, and there was advanced on to Junior Ritchie. Junior Ritchie, as a first grader, she got first place. This is her science fair board, and she got first place in Junior Ritchie. Now, Junior Ritchie is all the Intermountain High Schools here in the Intermountain West. If you win the Junior Ritchie, she got first place. She got a scholarship, $500 scholarship to Weber State University when she's in the 6th grade. I never heard of this before. And she ended up and being invited to apply to the Broadcom Masters. Broadcom Masters is a national science fair program that only 300 of the top contestants are invited to. She was invited to apply for that. And here's just something else. We're getting almost out of time, but I want to get through this part of it. This is a yellow Concord grape. Now, this was a plant that was planted on my neighbor's property right next to the chain link fence. Now, notice that the leaves there are 12 inches. That's a yellow Concord grape leaf. And I noticed the first 6 years, my neighbor had planted this plant. The first 6 years, he was just sitting there. It wasn't even growing to the top of the fence. And so I asked him, look, since it's part of the chain link fence, do you mind if I take care of this plant? I like to, put some minerals, spray some minerals on it. And I also put some minerals on the ground so where the roots can get to it. And so 4 years later, each year I get this canopy of this plant was growing more and more and more. And I, getting these grapes off of these grapes, and they were delicious. And finally, somebody asked me, he said, Marvin, well, how much grapes are you getting off this one plant? Well, I don't know. I'm getting a whole banana boxes full of them. I don't know. And so, well, maybe you should maybe keep track of what you're getting so you can kind of show the results. Okay, so the summer 2016, I decided I'm going to go ahead and keep track of what I picked. Now, bear in mind, this plant was 10 years old by this time. It had 4 years of being mineralized. One plant. It had, in 4 years' time, it had grown exponentially. Now, this is Dr. Wallach holding a tape measure, and this is the week, October 2016, and he's holding a cluster of those grapes. And if you look real close at that tape measure, it is at 34 feet, almost 35 feet from the corner of the property on the right-hand side. And you can see right behind Dr. Wallach is the main branch of that plant. That's what had grown in 4 years. 4 years. Now, here's just some pictures of that plant. And
now,
now
Marv, I wanted to mention something. If you'll back up here, my folks had Concord grapes in their garden. Yeah, the next picture, the next one right here, the one where he's got he's holding. You can see a close up of the yeah, right there. Look how big and good those are. Notice there's no bug bites in them. And there's no missing branches. Now, when my folks raised these grapes, there would be bug bites on there. And, when you try to eat them, with a Concord grape, you kind of, you hold the skin and you kind of pinch it into your mouth and suck on the juice. And sometimes those bug bites will connect the skin to the fruit, and and you'll feel it in your mouth. But there's no bug bites on here, and most of these, this is unusual because most of these bunches when you brought them to me, most of them were double bunches, and they were heavy to the feel. I mean, you could feel the weight of these grapes, and eating one bunch of those was like eating a meal. It was satisfying, it was sweet, it was good. You didn't have to have a dessert or anything like that, and it was all because of the natural sweetness. The Brix level was high enough, from these grapes. It's just amazing.
The bricks on these grapes were in the excellent, above excellent category. And as a result, I had some wine made from these grapes, and I don't know anything about wine. I had somebody make some wine, and I had a professional wine taster. She's a former Kansas City Chiefs cheerleader, and she had quite a bit of experience tasting wine and wine. So I gave her a bottle of wine. It's my brother-in-law, and my brother's married to her, and so I gave her a bottle of wine. Her name is Holly, and we lived back in Missouri. And she did her wine glass thing, swirl it around and look up at the light and said, "Oh wow, this is some really good high quality wines." Well, how do you know? Well, look, the reason you swirl the wine around a wine glass is because you separate the grape juice from the alcohol, and depends how much alcohol is on top determines the quality of wine. I said, I've never seen wine with this high content of alcohol. An 8-ounce glass of wine, I can promise you, will put you to bed at night and you'll sleep all night. Okay, so. I still have a bottle of this wine. I still have a bottle of this wine. I'm not going to open it. I don't know when, but it is a white wine, and it's not dry. It is sweet and juicy. It tastes so good. And here's a little corner, kind of from my deck. And this is Dr. Wallach, my wife Julie. That's a little 12 by 12 mini barn. I call it a little shop back. And then notice the arrows point to basically 30 feet, 3 directions on that chain link fence. And you lift up that canopy underneath those grapes, and this is what you see. See how many clusters of those grapes? There's hundreds and hundreds of these underneath there. And so I went out. Now, bear in mind, the neighbors, there's 4 neighbors, three of our neighbors that's basically that were able to have access to these grapes. They picked these, ate the grapes, whatever they want to. In August, when you step out in the backyard of my backyard, there's a sweet aroma of grape.
Yeah.
That's how sweet it smelled. It was incredible. And so we had grapes come in season about the 3rd week of August, and they were still in season until October, killing frost. Now, we always wanted to get the grapes harvested before killing frost. So I went out there, and when Dr. Wallach showed up, that was the 16th of October, 2016, and 12th of October 2000. I think it was 12th of October 2016. Anyway, here's the base of that trunk, 5 inches in diameter. When I first started feeding this plant, that trunk was not even 2 inches in diameter. It grew 3 inches in 4 years. Okay, huge success. And so that October, I want to say it's the 12th of October. It was I want to say the 2nd week in October. I went out. And I harvested all those grapes that I could from, both all neighbors' fence and everything. And those are banana boxes. And you add all those up, that's 230 pounds of grapes. Now, that's not counting. I had 2 72-quart coolers that I picked off of that and took it to Young Longevity Convention in 2016. And we sampled that. We had enough samples for people, over 300 people that were invited to the agriculture presentation.
Well, I remember in 2017, you brought me a box, and it was just, and they'd been in the back of your pickup for 2 weeks because you were 2 weeks getting to my place, and man, they were good.
And they didn't spoil, did they?
Not at all. Even the bruised ones didn't spoil.
No.
I mean, there were some bruised. I ate them anyway, and they were not spoiled at all.
So with that said, we are running out of time. And Dr. G, I mean, I bet your mouth is watering right now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Listen, I love grapes, and I can tell you
that those grapes. I was, what's interesting is this: he planted a yellow Concord on my side of the property. On the other side of the property was a purple Concord. That purple Concord never reached that 6 foot top of that 6 foot chain link fence. Never. While I was there.
So Marvin, comes time for a call to action here. If you have a desire to have your body function better, if nothing else, start with the minerals. If you can't afford anything else, come to us and get the minerals. Come to our website or contact me at 406-270-3754. Text me, and we can get you started with the minerals. At least they're they're fairly inexpensive. You want to get on those minerals because that's really the basics of all your nutrition is the minerals. Without minerals, vitamins are worthless. And if you want a complete nutrition, we can help you with that too. So don't overcomplicate. Just get started with the minerals, and we'll help you with that if you want to, and we can educate you as much as you want to be educated. And let me just divide the difference between knowledge and wisdom. We can give you knowledge, but we can't give you wisdom. Knowledge is knowing the way. Wisdom is going the way, putting into action what you actually learn.
Yep.
And using, wisdom is, and the Bible says, with all you're getting, get wisdom. Wisdom is the universe was founded by wisdom, and your body is very, very important. Your life span is determined by the health of your body. If your body is breaking down and losing its vitality, it's maybe because of one or two things. It's either because of misalignment, or it can also be because of nutritional deficiencies. Now let me say this. If you have nerve interference, you're going to have nutritional deficiencies, because your body cannot efficiently use these nutrients, and it will lose nutrients as a result of the stress on the nervous system. So get your nervous system corrected. We can help you find someone. Contact if you need to find a NUCA doctor, a chiropractor who is going to stress maximal correction. And listen, chiropractors all over can help you. I mean, but I emphasize NUCA doctors because I am one and believe in it. So if you want maximum structure and function are related, so contact us. And Marvin, do you have anything to wrap this up? Do you have any final thoughts?
Well, we have even got halfway through our presentation of the agriculture and plants. So next week, we're going to pick up where we left off. And I'm not kidding you. You're going to want to be here for that. Bring your friends and family. Tell them about this. Because if you're a gardener, if you're a master gardener, you're going to win a lot of contests. A lot of contests with these minerals. And if you truly are sitting on the fence line about how these minerals will work, try them on your houseplants.
Mm-hmm.
Try your houseplants. Okay.
Or on your cats and dogs.
On cats and dogs, yeah. And
plants on your dog food or cat food.
Plants will respond to these minerals within 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks. Now, it takes us 90 days to respond to these minerals before you start really seeing major improvement. But plants, in 3 weeks, you will see improvement in that plant's genetic potential.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's amazing. Go ahead, Doc.
G.
No, I was going to say, and don't forget, in a couple upcoming weeks, we're going to be talking about wheat gluten, and a lot of different things about different breads, so we can learn what kind of breads we're not supposed to eat, and maybe the ones that we are supposed to eat.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sounds good, guys.
Excellent.
Come again. Join us, guys. We're really going to town on this, and you guys are doing a great job. Let me just tell you. You are.
Well, thank you.
So goodbye, everybody, and
we'll see you next week.
If you haven't heard this before, Dr. Wiedemann's the man.
Yeah. If anybody claims, of all those who claim to cure, there are only 3 who tell the truth. And that's the butcher, the tanner, and the tobacco farmer.
And with that, I say goodbye, everybody. Have a great night.